introduce yourself and like what's your name and what's your job.
All right. My name is Gabrielle Murphy, or Not Queen, if you wish. I'm a community manager for Dead by Daylight at Behavior Interactive.
So for that, can you talk something about your daily job? What do you do for the normal days?
Okay, so before I was hired at Behavior, I was a graphic designer. I had my own business, so I was working as a freelancer from home. And before that, I did event planning, and I did a lot of it. So actually, I was a fan of Dead by Daylight before I got hired, and I was lucky enough that I met the dev team at PAX 2017, PAX East 2017, and 1 month later, I get the director, Matt Cote. He just typed something in my chat while I was streaming, and he's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you. Do you mind?" And I'm like, "Yes, no problem." My chat goes crazy, right? They're like, "Oh, well, the director wants to talk to you. What's happening? Tell us, tell us, tell us." I'm like, "I don't know yet, guys." So I got invited to the studio, and I got offered the community management job, which I've always compared this to, let's say you play basketball in your backyard, and then this NBA guy is like, you come play for the big leagues. So that's kind of how I tell my story. It was really. So I was still walking on a cloud, and I'm still doing it. I can't believe I'm actually working for video games. It was kind of a dream of when I was a kid, but now I had the chance by meeting these guys and having this story behind me. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And what exactly is your daily job when you're drawing Behavior?
Oh, so my daily job was I was a graphic designer, and I had my own business.
Even now?
Even now, well, now I just do a little contract here and there, like clients I kept.
So what do you do when you're joining the Behavior?
Oh, when I joined for community management.
Yes. And what is your daily job as a?
Oh, okay. Yeah. What do I do on a daily? So I mostly actually do all the communication strategy behind, like, so hey, we're having, I don't know, an event coming up. Like, how are we going to talk about it? What we're going to do for this? Also, I do a lot of feedback. So I bring the feedback from the community to the dev team, and then I bring back the information from the dev team to the community. So I would say it's kind of a bridge between the community and the dev team. So that's my job. It's mainly preparation, communication. I try to look at every communication platform we have at every day to make sure that, to see what people are talking about for the game and everything. And then I raise flag to the team. I'm like, hey, this thing, they don't like it. Or, hey, this thing seems to be a problem. Can we do something about it?
So, what does the player community of Dead by Daylight looks like? How do you describe all the players?
I would say, as a whole, we are lucky to have one of the most passionate fans out there. It's crazy. They love the game so much. They will spend hours to give us feedback, right? Every single day, everyone has their own feedback. It's really nice. We have really good fan heart. We have people who are involved outside. We have broadcasters that love our game, that broadcast our game daily. So this is very interesting. They're passionate, and a lot of people would see this sometimes as toxic because they are sending us feedback, sometimes in a bad way. But I see it as passion. They all love something, and they want to tell us what they love about it, but also what they would like to see change.
So there have been a lot of updates and DLCs for Dead by Daylight. Was there something at some moment something went wrong? Or
Yes.
Some mistake? How do you guys handle it?
So I can take examples. We had issues in the past where, like we launch an update and there's an issue that prevents players from playing the game or things like that. So what's important for us is that we improved our communication on this in the last year. So we have a whole process. So I have the programmers, the technical team that is telling me, hey, we have an issue right here, and we need to tell people that we are having an issue. And then I send the first wave of, okay, guys, we have an issue on this platform. This is the problem you see. And then I keep in touch with the technical team to see if we're resolving the issue or not, like what's happening. And then I give feedback to the team. What's really important is that as much as I'm doing it on social media, I'm also doing it with our external CM team. So we have someone in UK, United Kingdom, we have someone in Russia, and we have someone in China. So we make sure that this information spreads out to everyone. When we have issues, and for example, it happens at a time where, I mean, sometimes we need to sleep also. Oh, yeah. So I will wake up because I get like the messages, but sometimes, you know, it's hard. The communication around the world, it's kind of hard sometimes to make sure that everybody gets everything in a timely manner, but we're getting a lot better on this one.
Okay, let's keep going and back to the formal questions, and that is, what's your proposal or opinion for the community management job?
Okay.
What do you think of it?
What do I think of it? I love it, actually. I think that community is the heart of the game, and that we need to take care of the community and give them information when they need to know, and have an open dialogue with them, and get a lot of feedback from them, because ultimately this game is for the player.
Oh, so in your opinion, is there some, you're a gamer, right?
Yes.
You play a lot of other games. So what do you think, is there something special for behavior to think of their own community? Something different from the other games?
About Dead by Daylight specifically?
Yes.
I think the whole theme with the horror team, I think it attracts a lot of people that is different type of gamers. So you have the multiplayer for Dead by Daylight. You have the fact that you can play as a solo player or you can play as a team. You can have fun when you start playing the game and you're scared in a corner, but you can also have fun when you've been playing the game for 2,000 hours and you're playing it to win, you know? So I think our big strong suit is that we're talking to a lot of different gamers. And I know people who were maining Minecraft before. I know people who were playing FPS shooters that are coming to our game, and they all get together. So I think we're attracting a lot of fans from all type of games.
Great. And what do you think is the importance of community of behavior?
Well, as I said earlier, I think the community is really the heart of a game. So obviously, when you have a game like Dead by Daylight and people are so passionate, I think we need to embrace this, and we need to really keep the dialogue open and get a lot of feedback, and also give them a lot of information, you know.
And, is there anything different between the player community of different countries?
Yes.
What's special about it?
Yes, there is. Actually, we're lucky enough that we're talking to a community that is worldwide, but that's also including that some smaller groups have like different ways to see the game. So some groups are more competitive. Some of them are not playing the same meta as other, which is really crazy, right? So they come in and they kind of skew our stats. So if we say, oh yeah, self-care is the most played perk, well, in some communities, it's not. So it's very special. Also, as for example, the Chinese community, So for us, it's harder to communicate with them. So, for example, what I was saying earlier about the forums, so we're trying to find a way to bring the CAPTCHA down for the Chinese community so they can access the forum easily, so they can have the same kind of information that we give to other players. This is hard because it delays the information, so they get a little bit less. But we're lucky we have Andy over there that is trying. We're gonna get it. Are they done with the door?
No.
Yeah. So it's time that people start leaving the studio, so like it's over and over again.
Just keep it open.
Let's put an X on it.
There are 2 doors actually.
Yes, that's why it's like a ruckus.
Oh, that's why there's one noise after another. There are two doors. How you doing?
So
it's fun with this question.
okay, so
last one.
yes, let's just say that because we knew that we needed to communicate with the Chinese community. This is why we hired a Chinese community manager. So we're sure that the information gets passed through.
So the last one is
Yes.
the one we talked about why you are attracted by Behavior Interactive as a gamer or as a fan of this game or anything else.
Okay, so honest answer here. Before I started playing Dead by Daylight, I didn't know what Behavior Interactive was. So I actually learned about the company when I started playing the game. And then they invited me to work for them. So I researched a little bit what they were doing, and I was surprised to learn like all the different studios that were inside the big studio. So Dead by Daylight's inside digital, which is making our own game. And then you have mobile, you have business, and then you have studio, who is doing parts of work for hire, parts of other games for other companies. So this is, I hope I said the right thing, looking at you. So yeah, this is really interesting. It's kind of 4 studio into one, and Dead by Daylight is just a small part of the entire business. So this is really cool. Another thing that really kept me in Behavior is the way I saw the project evolve. So when I started working for Dead by Daylight, we were 35 employees, a super small team, right? That's 15 QAs in there, so 30 devs and 15 QAs, which are devs, by the way. And I joined a small team, and we were talking to PC-only players at that time, and we were doing about 8,000 CCU average when I got in. And then since I got there, I've seen the growth of this team and the growth of the community, and both are growing together, and I think it's really nice to see that. And I can see that the team has really shifted the focus towards, you know, like trying to like include community feedback a lot more, and this is really interesting.
Shall we repeat the question, the story of Foundation?
So we've started in Bega 2 started in 1992. I've started a business called MMI in 1994. We've merged in 1996. When we've merged, it was the start of building our first original product for console called Jersey Devil. But both companies before that were in multimedia CD-ROM. So Jersey Devil was really our first game, and it was published by Sony and Infogram at the time, and Konami in Japan.
So is there some kind of version of the whole company? Is there a plan for the future at the time it was founded?
I repeat the question.
Do you have a plan or a vision?
Okay, yes, okay. So at the time, I was trying to create a developer that was making his own game. When Jersey Devil was released, It was successful, but not enough successful to do a second one. And so Infogrames approached us to do a Looney Tunes project based on Bugs Bunny that was using the same engine and same technology than Jersey Devil. And that's how we've started to create games for others. So we've made several games starting from that point based on known IP, while always trying to create our own original on the side. So we've created Scalar and other original after that, but always while doing work for hire for others.
So, during the whole history, have you faced any crisis? How do you work through it?
So our first crisis happened in, so we've grown to 400 employees while doing work for others and some original games like in 2004 we did Scalar, and in 2008 we did Wet. But we've grown to 400, and in 2008 the market changed for work for hire. We were doing mostly family games at the time, Scooby-Doo based on known IP, and that market crashed in 2009 with the free games on mobile and on Facebook. And that was the first crisis. We had to let go over a period of 2-3 years, 200 employees. So we've reduced a lot. That was our first real crisis, difficult time.
And once there was a rename of the company.
In 2008, we've renamed the company Behavior, a name that we had when we merged. When Megatoon and MMI merged, we became Behavior Interactive. The story is that I sold the company in '96 and bought it back in '99. And when I bought it back, I couldn't get the Behavior name. So I changed the name to Artificial Mind and Movement. And in 2008, we bought back the name Behavior from the former owner. And we re-became Behavior Interactive, a name that we liked a lot at the time. So that's what the story about the name.
So why Behavior? What's the special?
Well, it was there's no real story about Behavior. We like what it means. It's a way of acting within the game, or so it's just it's a name that we always like from the 90s. So. And when it was available to buy back, we were looking to change the name at the time, and everybody was comfortable with that name, and we went and bought the name back.
So the rename, does it affect your team or job?
No, there's no. I think we're passionate about our name. Now that and also the name, I think, resonates well within the Western audience. So we're known. We've been known for now 10 years with Behaviors and as a name, and it's a comfortable name. Even in French Canada, people don't mind having an English name as a company. When the first game we did for a publisher was Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes in 1999, and it was a whole game. So from that point on, we were making the complete game. We started to do co-development in like 4 or 5 years ago. Before that, when we were taking a mandate on a work for hire on an official IP, it was always the whole game we were doing. And the publisher was managing the marketing and the sales. And we were developing the whole game. We started to do co-dev 5 years ago only on big console title, and we still on mobile are doing the whole game. We don't do co-dev on mobile until we just started the Game of Thrones as a co-dev. This is our first co-dev on mobile.
Why did you decide to make an original game on your own, the Die by Day?
So there's an history of making original games throughout the years. So Jersey Devil, Scalar, Wet, Naughty Bear. We worked on the Dead by Daylight concept for years, and it was always our passion to create our own game. And Dead by Daylight was something that we were very passionate about for years, and it was. To us, it was important that to create some original IP, and we've tried many times before, not very successful. But this one, I think we've learned a lot from Wet and Naughty Bear, and the technology that exists today was way better to create those types of games. So that's how we've came up with Dead by Daylight.
So, the Dead by Daylight is such a unique game. So, have you ever been worried about it before the project begins? Worried of failure or anything else?
I think that in the market we want to be, we have to be very original. We're not spending 100 million on a game. We're spending a little bit amount of money when we create those games. So, we have to be different. And I was never afraid of the fact that we were very different than any other concept out there. I think that we wanted to be different. So that was part of what we were looking for. And I mean, just to tell you a little story, the first forecast we got for Dead by Daylight, we were looking at 300 to 400 users. And we're now higher than 5 million. So it's even at 300-400, it would have been a success for us.
Great. Then for many new players, they will think Behaviour as a new company who just make Dead by Daylight. What do you think of it?
Well, it's true that we were not known to the players community. We were we're well known within the publishers community. So we were mostly a B2B business. Even when we did original title, they were always published by a publisher. It was our first publishing venture, Dead by Daylight, where we co-published, but we're still the co-publisher. Now we are the publisher on Dead by Daylight, so it's the community will get to know us by playing our games, basically.
Then why did you decide to make the Death Garden right after the Dead by Daylight?
So while we were Dead by Daylight was growing, we thought that we could improve some of the game and element and some of the feature within Dead by Daylight by creating another experience that is not similar, different. So this is the idea behind Death Garden is things that that Dead by Daylight will never go into that we wanted to do, and Dead by Daylight is. The concept will evolve, but never towards a Death Garden, which is a lot different. So that's a passion of ours. We will create other games in the future, not necessarily based on Death Garden or Dead by Daylight, but it was a passion of ours to create the Death Garden.
So for players like us, Behaviour has a passion and something special attitude towards the whole player company. So why does it come from? Compared to the other companies, you guys are very, very enthusiastic to discuss with players. Why?
Well, I think that coming from a development community, we want to talk directly to our audience. It's something that as soon as we started Dead by Daylight, we wanted to, we were never able to talk directly to the players before in any other venture that we did. That was our first chance to talk directly to the community. And so we're very passionate about this. We think that the community gives us a lot of good feedback on the game. And so to make it better and better.
Great. And what's Behaviour's future plan after the success of Death Garden and Dead by Daylight?
So first of all, there's no after Dead by Daylight or Death Garden. It's still going on, so we want to build on those games. But we will create other PC console games. We will original. We're looking at also other platform for Dead by Daylight and Def Garden. And on the mobile side, we've licensed Game of Thrones. So on the mobile side, we might do original. We might go. Obviously, we will have our titles sometimes on mobile. We're looking at the mobile market differently than what we're doing on PC console. To how to differentiate ourselves than the way we're doing it on PC console.
And what do you think is the behavior's core competency in your opinion?
Technically, we were always very good from the get-go, from the start. We've grown creatively over the years, but our approach has always been, as much as everything, we want to be very balanced. So we're always approaching creativity or technology or even business model with a balanced approach. So we're trying to be as much as edgy as we can without taking so many risks. So we want the word is balance and probably passionate, but with a balance. So we're always trying to look at the passion and the balance and see how it fits us.
Great. And are you a gamer or what's your opinion about video games?
So I was a gamer from the get-go. I still play. I look now with iOS 12. You see how many hours you play a day, which is not very good. I still play games. I play our games and I play other games constantly. So I'm a gamer. I don't play that much PC games as I used to. But I still play a lot of mobile games.
And during these days, we see many stuff from multiple culture. We see many stuff. They come from maybe different countries, they speak different languages. How can behavior handle all the multicultural?
We tell them to we tell we have 80 people out of 475 that are foreigners to Canada. We try to get them into our culture as much as possible, and they in a way they have to blend in our culture. In a way, we have to adapt to them. So that's something that we're working on all the time. People that are coming from Western Europe are very, very similar to us in terms of the French-Canadian culture and the Canadian culture. So the adaptation for them is very easy. For the Americans and other country, they have to adapt a little bit more, and we adapt to them also.
So my name is Philip Ivanovich. I'm currently the art director on Dead by Daylight.
Great. So then what's your identity outside your job?
Yeah.
You do.
So outside of work, I really enjoy playing music, doing some artwork for bands. I'm doing also some painting. I love to paint traditionally, and doing some drawing with ink. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Are you hearing me or?
You can put a little backward. Yeah. Okay.
Better? Okay. You want me to restart? Just making sure it's all right. So my name is Philip Ivanovich. I'm currently the art director on Dead by Daylight. Yeah.
Outside of the job,
so outside of work, I'm doing a lot of freelance work for a band or festival, illustration, shirt design. I'm also playing music. I play guitar, but I also do. I have a project which is more electronic, but ambient.
And the passion for video games. Do you like it?
Yeah, passion for video game started when I was pretty young with the Atari, Nintendo. I was still going to the park, but I was playing a lot video games with my friends, and I think it's really nice because I've learned not the basic, but the how video games work and what's making a fun game or not. And I think now looking back, it's a good experience, and I think I can grab some elements from it and put it in the game today, and I think it's nice.
And how do you join Behavior, and how long have you been?
So I joined Behavior in 2004. I used to work in more in the movie industry, in commercials. I also did a lot of graphic design stuff, and yeah, I joined Behavior and 15 years, and there's so many cool projects that I stayed, and it's always a nice experience in between projects. Yeah. Now I'm on Dead by Daylight, and it's going pretty well.
What's the story of your joining the team of Dead by Daylight? You know, it's kind of like a big project for Behavior. How do you join the team?
Yeah, so before joining the team, I was on another project, and before that, we kind of started the roots of the game, the prototype, and yeah, I moved on another project, and then I came back on the Dead by Daylight, and it was launched, but I joined the team, and it was pretty fun. I was pretty excited because it's something that I always wanted to do, like a horror game, and especially here in Montreal, so it's fun.
Then what's the content of your daily job? What do you do exactly?
Yeah.
Everything?
The daily job is, well, sorry, I'll go again. So every day is pretty different, but it's pretty much sitting with the artists, giving the vision, reviewing some assets. We have a lot of meetings for stuff that are coming, and even in a year or something, we try to plan everything. And when I have time, I can work and do some concept too. But there's a lot of meeting, and yeah, it's mainly the vision of the project visually. And I sit down a lot with the creative director, Dave Richard, and we talk about what's coming next, and we share some ideas, even outside of work sometimes, because yeah, it's for us, it's really a passion, and it's our baby, and we really enjoy working on the project.
What do you need to think of when you start to deal with the art concept for such things like a new product, a new character? What do you think?
Usually when we start a new character, environment, a chapter, in the end, again with Dave Richard, we meet, and we have sometimes just a name or just the idea, and from there we share some idea and what would be cool, what would be nice, and yeah, and then I sit when I have enough info and we agree on what we want, the direction. I collect some visual, some ideas, and then I meet with the concept artist, and we start exploring like some ideas of characters, and yeah, from there it's everything starting from that point. Then the designers are testing mechanics, and we're kind of building the visual, and then when the concept is done, well, we share it to the character artists, and then we bring it to the animator, and it's always the same process, but it's really fun to see the small ideas sometimes becoming this big idea. Yeah.
take one example for how do you define the art style for a game and makes it looks original. Correct.
So, for example, if we take the Doctor, the the main idea is the same. Like it's a Doctor, but how we can make it more our own. So it's always a question also with the entity. Entities modifying the reality. So we wanted the stretcher in his mouth to be more extreme, to have the look that it's you fear him, and he's pretty tall, and you clearly see that it's been through a lot of pain and through a lot of modification, either by the entity or whatever happened to him. I mean the also what plays a lot is the sound. So his laugh. We wanted something very disturbing. So when you see him coming, you don't feel safe at all, and you clearly see that he's not just a doctor. He's here to give you a treatment.
And how do you deal with the relationship between horror movie or anything that inspire you and the final character design?
How I deal? Well, there's a lot of great movies. Like my favorite movies are from The Shining or Alien or The Thing. It's all for me. It's like they're kind of the best for me, the best influences, because especially Alien, it's not based on always seeing the creature. It's about the fear of the unknown, and the stress of not seeing what's around you, and it's the darkness and the sound. Like it's all those elements are pretty important for us. And movies. I'm not saying that it's not the same now, but right now I think, especially big movie, they're showing most of the stuff in the trailer, and then you go see the movie and you already seen the movie because everything is a trailer. So I think the element of surprise, that's something that really, for me in movies, is a big thing important thing.
So, in your all this experience in the Dead by Daylight team, what does a team to do to make a game success like Dead by Daylight?
What does it take? Well, I think for making a good game, there's basic but very important stuff. The big one is communication, because we all need to know what everybody's doing and where everybody's at. So it's either by doing meetings or reviews, and also teamwork. Well, they go end to end, so it's like very. It's a collective thing. It's not just one guy doing the entire thing. I've seen some people doing that, but it's mainly for indie or other game. But well, even big game, I saw that. But I think what makes it really good, or what's the important key factor, is really to collectively work together and talk together, and then it's talent is important. But if you have talent and you don't talk to each other, well, you fell at the end, because you have something pretty, but maybe it won't work because it's not working in the game.
The last one, actually, I think, is that is a big one, actually. What do you think, behavior want to achieve in the whole game industry, or what do you guys want to express through the whole video games?
Can I take a second turn?
Okay.
Just because I wrote it and. Okay. So one of the main well, not the main, but the important thing for the company is to continue crafting imaginary into play. And I think to be a leader in what we're doing, I think we're, not I think, but we work really hard to get where we're at now, and people are respecting us with our work, and it's giving us chances to also work on plenty other games beside Dead by Daylight. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
And which character is your favorite? Which one is the most impressive to you?
Impressive? I have a big crush on the Huntress. Me and Dave, we really love where it was going, and I think the human side of her is connecting with a lot of people, and seeing all those cosplay is really rewarding. For me, it's like the best thing when fans are enjoying what we're doing and showing us with cosplay and or when they're saying, "Oh, my favorite character is the Huntress," sending us some drawings. Other character that I like, I really love the Spirit, because she's pretty special. She was a lot of work, but I think we achieved something really nice with her, and it shows. Yeah, I have many favorite characters, but those are my main character I really enjoy.
I'm Dave Richard. I'm the creative director on Dead by Daylight.
下一个是什么时候加入的Behavior？ 什么时候加入的团队？
So, when did you join Behavior Studio, and when did you Dead by Daylight?
对，
And when did you join the Dead by Daylight production team?
Right. Well, I started at Behavior almost 20 years ago. It's been quite a while, actually. And I started working on Dead by Daylight at the very beginning, about 6 years ago.
那么这个项目是如何开始的？就是 Dead by Daylight 是如何开始的？
So how did the project start, Dead by Daylight?
Right. So we have a long heritage. It's been a while, almost a decade, that we wanted to create this game. We're passionate about horror, and we also were very curious about the asymmetry and the multiplayer aspect of games.
这个点子是怎么开始的？就是作为恐怖游戏题材的点。
So as a horror game in general, how did this idea, like when and how did this idea spark, and how did this idea evolve?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, so very, very passionate about horror, and in the horror genre, the asymmetry multiplayer doesn't really exist. It's something that we really wanted to explore. So this is how it started. Actually, we started doing some prototypes around about 6 years ago, and we found that idea really quickly, where this overpowered killer against the 4 survivor was really, really fun and engaging.
然后是，讲说这个不对称的对抗，他刚才说了一下如何提出的，然后说一下这设计上有什么难点，就是这个非对称。
So what are some of the difficulties of asymmetrical gameplay design?
Right. So obviously balancing an asymmetrical game is a nightmare. When we started, it was all about gut feeling, prototyping, testing with the team. And now that the game is live, it's all about looking at the data, making sure that we listen to our community, and of course there's still a little bit of gut instinct when it comes to balancing the game.
我们能否举一个就是原型机的开发例子，说明一下这个难度？
So can you maybe give us one or two couple examples, like the difficulties of making the prototype, like
The whole
examples,
mechanic
yeah.
thing.
Right. There's something that we call the race to arms, where to make the game fun, we need to give enough power to the killer so that they feel powerful. But the more power we give them, it becomes unfair to the survivor. So we give a little bit more to the survivor, but then it unbalances again. So that race to arms is what was the most difficult. Like, find this sweet spot where it's fun for everybody and it feels fair for everyone.
然后第一个杀手是哪个？是哪一个？然后如何设计出来的？
So who is the first killer, and then how did this idea come up?
Right. So the original killer of Dead by Daylight is the Trapper, so Evan McMillan. So all inspired by the hulking monster and slashers of the 80s, right? So this guy was supposed to be mean, super scary, and the bear trap was something that we toyed with in Naughty Bear, actually. This is where the inspiration come from. And in Naughty Bear, it was proven it was a super fun mechanic to use, so we started there with our first killer.
有什么被遗弃的设计吗？为什么最后放弃了？
So what are some designs that abandoned and why are they not used in the final game?
Right. So in the prototyping phase, we actually identified the core mechanics quite early, and what we see in the game today is pretty much the same thing. But I can give you one example of one killer that dropped out that we didn't do yet. Maybe we'll do it in the future. But at the time in the prototype, we had a ghost character that could actually fly anywhere and go through walls. So obviously, way too powerful for the game.
在这个游戏正式发售之后，它都有些哪些调整是比较大的调整？
So what are some of the major mechanic changes after the game has been published?
Right. Very interesting. So I will say that we were a bit naive when we first designed the game. So we made Dead by Daylight thinking it's at its core a hide and seek game. But when we released the game, we soon realized that the community would prefer and play the game more boldly. So the chase would be way more important. So one of the big things that changed during development is to getting these mechanics around the chase more polished and more fun, and adding more components to this part of the game rather than to the hide and seek.
开发在上线之后有没有遇到一些犯了很严重的错误，然后他们如何修改这些危机，如何度过？
So have you encountered serious problems after the game has been online, and then how did you come up with a solution?
Let me think.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay, just trying to find a good problem. Oh yeah, okay. Okay. So very early in development, not in development, when we release, very early after release, actually when we find out that the players would use the chase, the survivor would use the chase to kite the killer for a really long period, we've realized that our economy in the chase, so using windows, using pallets, and looping the killer was becoming a problem, and was infuriating the killer, which felt weak. So we made sure to review level design, to add new choke points, and to make sure that there was some mechanic that would stop abusing the windows, the vault, and the pallets, so that the killer would feel powerful again. We've also implemented a whole new system called Bloodlust, which makes the killer faster as the chase takes more time.
然后当设计一个新杀手的时候，是从什么思路出发的？是从游戏机制出发，还是从这个恐怖片的形象出发的？
So when designing a new killer, is it
是从这个玩法出发，还是说这个恐怖形象出发？
so? Do you design by? Do you start from looking at the game mechanics, or is it more inspired by horror movie?
Right, it's a great question. It's a bit of both. Sometimes we get inspired by a specific killer or something cultural, a story, a legend, urban legend, and we build the power around that. But most of the time, it's the opposite. We look at gameplay that is missing from the game and what we could do in a specific aspect of the game, and then we create a killer that fits this theme. So it's a little bit of both. What's important for us every time we do a killer is that we break the game. We want to add something that's completely new. It's like a new boss fight, something that will change the gameplay for the killer, but also our survivor needs to react to this new killer.
在设计生存者的时候，有没有什么有趣的点子之类的，或者有趣的故事？
So when designing survivors, are there any interesting ideas or interesting stories behind it?
Oh, absolutely. We put as much effort in Survivor than the killer. So of course Survivor don't have powers, but their unique perks are linked to their story, and we want to make engaging characters that are varied and that don't fit tropes or stereotypical character. So we put a lot of effort in their stories as well.
从一个设计师的角度来看，它就是如何总结、精炼的总结这个玩法的核心乐趣在这种非对抗。
Very interesting question, difficult question. So I think that in both game, what works well is uncertainty of what is going to happen. So all core mechanics, but also all upgrading paths for your character is very diverse and makes it that when you face the other party, when you face a killer or a hunter, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And that creates these emergent gameplay and scenarios that are really interesting and makes our game unique.
接下来就是最后的质量问题，一个是这个成功之后，它觉得是这个成功为 behavior 带来了什么变化？这个公司，尤其它作为一个老员工。
So what are some changes that's being brought to the company by the success of the game Dead by Daylight, especially from your point of view as a senior employee in this company?
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's been good for us because creatively we can explore new areas that we couldn't before. So now that we go towards publishing, we go to our marketing, and we create our own content, and we are totally free of doing whatever we want. So creatively, it's fantastic to be able to explore this world and these characters.
然后是工作，就是 behavior 的过去的工作经历，然后是公司的变化和一些。
那我这个分3个问题。So maybe you can talk to us about your work experience in this company in the past couple of years. Interesting stories or important things that you find it interesting to talk about.
Okay. Well,
Changes, yeah.
there's a lot of stories. Obviously, I don't have one particular in mind, but what I can say is that it's fantastic to work here at Behavior. I mean, for me, it's I have friends here. It's like a second family, and I enjoy coming to work every day.
然后是公司以来的变化和变。
So maybe talk about some changes in the company for the last 10 years. Some major changes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we definitely scaled. Now that we have live product, obviously the team are getting better. So this it takes some use to, but it's good. Obviously, there's also the new space, which is fantastic. We moved recently. I think this is great for all of us. It's motivating to be in such a great place.
你要谈谈他们搬家的经历吗？
可以刚才
他是工作状态。
他说他一直在这边，所以可以聊聊别人搬家什么。
So some interesting stories about moving.
About moving?
Yeah.
Well, okay. The old office where we were, there were a lot of renovation. So there were like noise all the time. It was it was super hot in the winter and then super cold in the summer for some reason. It was always not right. No bathrooms available. It was a mess. So when we moved here, I mean, it's just way better, obviously. So all these problems go away. We have a great space. We can concentrate on our games. That's it.
最后就是对中国社区、对中国玩家有什么想说的，就是这个。
So as the Chinese gaming community grows, and then they're also like a big fan of your games. So maybe can you talk some words to your Chinese game fans?
Absolutely. I am thrilled to now have a game that has an appeal internationally, and especially with the Chinese community. I mean, we've seen with Dead by Daylight the popularity of the game within that community. We've made friends, so I'm super excited to have even more Chinese players coming into our community.
Hi, I'm Chris Ferreira, so I'm the head of creative for Behavior Studios. I am the bottom line responsible for the quality of all the games that we make here. So I do a lot of interaction with our clients. I'm helping set the game vision and maintain the game vision for all the titles we make. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a very, very creative position.
然后接下来其实是这个，就是从如何加入比赛，如何加入比赛。
It would be different on every take, by the way. I barely ever repeat the same thing.
When and how did you join Behavior?
So I started at Behavior what will be 10 years ago. Wow. That's crazy to think, 10 years. It'll be the longest run at one game company that I've ever had. I joined after having moved to Canada. So I originally started back in the day at Ubisoft in 1998. So that puts me in the industry for 20 years now. So I'm a bit of a dinosaur. But I started at Ubisoft New York and then had a small stay in Montreal at Ubisoft Montreal before going to California, hence my San Francisco Giants hat. I was a season ticket holder and I lived in the Bay Area for about 7 years where I worked at EA, Redwood Shores, worked on all the Lord of the Rings games, Godfather games, and then came to Montreal to help found EA Montreal, where we did Army of Two. And after wrapping up a couple of games there, I decided to find a wife and have children and wanted a big quality of life change. And I came to Behavior, which was previously known as Artificial Mind and Movement. And I've been 10 years now, and I haven't been happier.
So, since you've been to so many game companies, what's the difference between them and Behavior?
So Behavior is a really interesting, I'd say it was an interesting experiment in that it was particularly made as a work for hire business 26 years ago, where we'd work in other people's brands, other people's IP, and mainly in kids games. And over my 10 years here, I've watched it transform over that time, where we've taken on bigger brands and we've learned how to create our own IP, which we then applied to make games like Dead by Daylight and now Death Garden as well. So we've sort of taken that expertise over all those years. And on top of that too, given we were an independent developer and still are an independent developer versus being a big publisher, we're very effective in our scheduling and budgeting. So for us, we have to make sure that we have the right people on the right tasks at the right time, and it also helps create a great quality of life. Very family environment, very family-friendly environment. Lots of people have children here, families, so it's a great place.
So, can you
有没有这种标准，就是工作流程的标准？从比如说有一个点，然后如何谈合作，然后如何推进项目，这样类似workflow。
那我现在拿这个稍微报个那个流程，然后我再来介绍有没有什么标准？
对，可以。
Can you introduce? Can you tell us something about the outsourcing workflow?
Yeah, so again, one of the things that makes Behavior unique and made us unique is the ability to work with other people's brands. And this could be anything from a kid's brand to a very mature adult brand. One of the things we do right away is we identify a person to be a champion. So we want that person to almost get to know the brand better than the brand owner. So if we were doing SpongeBob, I want this person to know all the actors, know all the characters, know all the stories. If we're doing a Disney title, or if we're doing any sort of even a fantasy title, whatever that brand might be, we want to be bigger experts in it than our client. So that's the first step that makes it a lot different. And on top of that, when we work, typically we have a client involved that has a lot of opinions. Sometimes these are from the game industry, so they understand how to make games. Sometimes they're from other media industries, so they might not understand the game business. So we have to explain to them, you know, how to make a game from a player's perspective. You always have to be thinking about the player, what they're doing, what they want to do, and not making a game for yourself because you may like one thing, but everyone else may absolutely hate it. And so even when I make games, because I like specific types of games, I really encourage my teams to make a game with that player in mind and that player experience and who that audience is.
So is there any standards in terms of outsourcing projects?
One thing we look for is working, and as you can see in our history of over our 26 years, the brand quality has gone up and up and up with bigger inherent audiences. You know, starting where we did doing kids family stuff to actually working on big game brands where we translate these game brands into other platforms. So I'll give you an example with Assassin's Creed Rebellion, which we just released on soft launch. We took what was a very core platform experience and turned that into a strategy RPG with a wider audience where we made smaller characters with big heads, sort of that chibi style, and really change the art style to open up the game to a wider audience. So depending on the mandate of the game, our approach can be different every time. Rarely ever do we have someone come to us and say, you know, this is the exact game I want, please make it, here are specifications. Typically they come and say, we want a game, what can Behavior do for us? So we'll get people together, we'll start thinking, we'll throw ideas, we'll throw like 3/4 of those ideas out, start over and come up with the best idea possible, and really work with the client to refine that, to make sure it meets the brand's needs, to make sure it meets the audience needs, and ultimately we'll make the best game possible for everybody.
达公司的 title。
对，需求就自己的，然后
或者是一些要求嘛，或者 requirement 有什么？
我就在想他们这次，
哦，
okay. So, when doing outsourcing projects, are there any interesting demands from the companies that ask you guys to outsource? Or it doesn't have to be very specific.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had necessarily interesting demands. Sometimes when we work with somebody, the brand that they own, they may not own it. They may have licensed it from someone else, who then may have different rights holders somewhere else. And we've seen this with our stuff for Dead by Daylight with the different companies that own the different slashers. There's so many people involved that you sort of have to make so many people happy. It can make things difficult, but we've become experts in that. You know, every mandate's a little bit different in terms of what people want, but I'd say there was nothing that was like in terms of what they asked for that was too crazy. I mean, we have some stories about things we've done where we've had crazy experiences. Like a while back, we did a game for an American game show called Wipeout. It's a game where people run on a course and they get hit with sticks and get knocked in the water and they get hurt, but they eventually win. And for us to become brand experts, we sent a team, including myself, out to Los Angeles to view a taping. And when we all got there, we got to see the course and got to see how it worked, and we all wanted to run the course. We're like, let us do it, let us go. And they wouldn't let us do it because they needed us to make the game, and they wanted us to sign waivers and all that, but it was impossible in the end for us to run it. But to see that up close and to be able to see the production of the show being made, that allowed us to translate that into what is a great game experience.
没关系，然后就是能不能说说外包团队和运营杀机的团队的关系，就是他们的外包可能是独立开发的团队的关系。
他们独立工作室叫什么？
第一个
他们外包的。
叫 Studios。
So what's the relationship between Behavior Studios and Behavior Digital?
Well, we all are the same company, so we're all under the umbrella of Behavior. And when I started at the company, we were all one big group. And what we did is when we sort of broke out into these different groups and have very specific avenues of focus, such as digital doing what they do and Behavior Studios doing what it did, I had some influence on those games, and their games now influence us. It's gone to show the people within studios that if you have a great idea, it can be its own unique product. It can grow into be something new. It doesn't have to be just someone else's brand. And we can actually work with a client on that same note to get that kind of game done. Also, our guys play a lot of Dead by Daylight. They play a lot of Death Garden. They're heavily involved. All the teams speak to one another. So we're constantly giving feedback and we're constantly giving learnings where we might do something in one game. We say, hey, we're doing this unique thing with streaming. What do you guys think? Can you do something with that? Or we're doing this unique mechanic. Or, hey, you guys did this really cool thing. Can we use that concept? Or how did you solve this? And have those conversations between the different directors and the different designers, even the engineers, to share the technology because it's all based on the same platform in terms of our Kraken backend.
So do people flow between studios?
Oh yeah, for sure. We have people that move across all the time. The big thing is making sure that that person has the passion and the real reason they want to do it. What we find is that the people that really want to work on Dead by Daylight and on Death Garden, that's specifically the kind of game they love to play. They love the competition, they love the thrill, they love the genre. Whereas when you come to studios, we work on such a wide variety, from a family game to an extremely hardcore game, that it's more of someone that wants to have something fresh all the time, but people move between all the time because at the end of the day, we're still one company.
然后其实很多人是通过运营杀机知道这个，所以很多人以为这是新公司，所以大部分玩家不知道这个他们所在团队的存在，他是怎么看待这个？对，当然了，这个怎么想，就是可能很多人没有意识到很多经验也是他们做的。然后你是怎么看待自己的工作的？
确定的这个信息就是说，确实很多玩家是通过。So since a lot of the players know this company because of the success of Dead by Daylight, and then but they don't know like this company has been involved in so many games in the past. What's your take in this?
Well, for Behavior Studios, the big thing for us is understanding that the industry, people that publish games, the people that make games, you know, bigger companies, especially abroad, companies in China, such as NetEase, know who we are and know what we can do. It's important that the fans know, but for the fan, it's that game experience. We want to make sure that, yes, they can love Behavior, and that's fine, and they can love everything Behavior does, but we want that Dead by Daylight fan to love the game, to really, really love that brand. And if we can expose them into more brands, and they might see that now, hey, Behavior did Assassin's Creed on mobile. Hey, maybe I'm going to try that game out because I know they hit a high watermark of quality. So I can expect that out of these other titles. And in studios, I wouldn't say that we're in it for the glamour of we don't want to be on stage saying, hey, here's the next big game, this is from us. That's really the spotlight for our original IP with Dead by Daylight and Death Garden. For us, we're really just happy to make our fans happy. That's the biggest goal. Keep the players entertained, keep the fans happy, and continue to give them new stuff and keep them engaged, because the day they walk away is the day we lose it all.
So as a player, what are some of the games that you are interested in?
Oh, so it's funny. When I was younger, I used to love playing traditional games. So for example, I would have a board game like a Monopoly or whatever. I would go to the store and I'd buy comic books, and I'd cut comic book characters out of the comic books. I'd tape them to the board. I'd change the different dice. I would change the rules, not knowing I was doing game design. I was just a kid having fun. And then it evolved into playing role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, those kind of things. But instead of playing, which I would do the campaigns, and I would direct people and say, oh, here's this scenario, and here's what you need to do, and write all the rules. And I never knew there was an outlet of that in an industry that I could actually apply that to make video games. And I ended up going to art school, and I did 4 years at the School of Visual Arts in New York City, where I did a degree in computer art and computer animation. And then when I had met with Ubisoft at my first job, I'd applied as an artist. But after speaking to me and knowing that I had a long history of games, going back to the early 1980s, where I had I had an Atari 2600, I had, you name the console. At the time, I used to get them all over time, but I played everything, and I was a big importer of games. So I imported a ton of games from Asia at the time. Even I had a converter for my Super Nintendo where I could play games from Japan. And I went into Ubisoft and I talked about all the market knowledge that I had. They said, oh, your art's good, but we actually like you for design because that's what you're really good at. And I didn't even know at the time that was a job. So I started there, and now for the past 20 years, I've been designing games, but I feel like I've been doing it since I was like 8 or 9 in reality.
So what are some of the games that you play now?
Oh, I have a wide range. Mind you, I have 2 kids and a wife, so my time is very, very limited. But I'm a bit of an addict for mainly the Blizzard games. So I spend a lot of time on Heroes of the Storm. I like MOBAs, but I'm not good enough for League of Legends, but I'm good enough for Heroes of the Storm, which is perfect for me. But I also like RPGs, role-playing games where I get to play a character and see it through. And I also invested over 400 hours in Monster Hunter from Capcom. So I played the crap out of that game because I absolutely love that series. I even play the DS version, Monster Hunter Stories. So I try to play a lot of games that appeal to me, but if we have to do work on a certain kind of game for research, I'll then play everything, because I want to play a little bit of all the games, but on the same note, there's some games that I'll really, like Monster Hunter or like Pillars of Eternity, that I'll dedicate a lot of time and focus into, even on mobile as well.
So we begin with the introduction.
Hey, my name is Isabelle Mauquard, and I'm the head of product strategy at Behavior. So I'm in charge of product management, marketing, community management, customer support, PR, and business intelligence.
So let's begin with the first one. How did you join Behavior Interactive?
That's a good question. So before joining Behavior, I worked in many video game companies with very large dev teams of 500 people and more. And I think it is great because in terms of production capability, it is insane. But I think that with such large dev teams, decisions are slower, and you don't necessarily ship more content. So I think that, and also I think that it becomes harder to get to know everyone on the team, and this is something that I value a lot. So that's why I decided to join Behavior. I wanted to join a human-sized company, and I think that this is something that is very unique for Behavior. It's the fact that teams are small enough so that it's still possible to know everyone, but and also be very agile, but it's also large enough so that we are able to deliver content to our players very regularly. So I think it's the perfect mix.
So why do you decide to start a career in the video game industry?
So I started my career in banking, and I decided to quit because it was boring as hell. I remember this day as if it was yesterday. I was in the middle of a World of Warcraft raid, and suddenly I realized that the content that I was playing, there were people who had been working on it, who had created this content. So the same evening, I decided to apply for a job in video games, and since then, I've been working in games. And I love it because playing games, video games are my passion, both playing and building them.
Is there anything special in behavior strategy of marketing?
Behavior Digital doesn't do marketing the same way a AAA studio would. And so, for example, we wouldn't create multi-million-dollar trailers or put billboards everywhere. However, for example, for Dead by Daylight, we have a very big team of community managers and moderators, and I really like this approach because I think that this is what allows us to be very close to our community, and I think that this approach is contributed a lot to what Dead by Daylight is today.
So what do you think that what makes players love Dead by Daylight? Why do they love it?
I think Dead by Daylight is, simply put, amazingly fun to play. The fact that we have millions of players playing the game regularly is, I think, a testimony that we've done things right. Yeah, wait. Okay. Where was it? Ah. Oh, right. Okay. So, okay, let's do it again. The rules are super simple. We have all played when we were young hide and seek, and it was very, very fun to play. But the game has also a lot of depth. You have tons of characters with its unique abilities, lots of different maps and different perks. So, yeah. Wait, let me do it again. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. So, Dead by Daylight is, simply put, amazingly fun to play. I think that the fact that we have millions of players playing the game regularly is a testimony that we have done things right. And Dead by Daylight is the rules in Dead by Daylight are very. Wait, sorry. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So the rules in Dead by Daylight are very simple and very fun. When we were young, we all played hide and seek, which was very, very fun. But the game has also a lot of depth. You have a lot of characters with its unique abilities, a lot of different builds, and a lot of different maps. The game is also very unique in the sense that it's a two-in-one game. Whether you play a survivor or a killer, you get to experience two very different games.
Great. And then the seventh one is, at the beginning of the project of Dead by Daylight, have you ever been worrying about the result and the benefit of the whole project?
Let me think. Okay, let me think. Dead by Daylight is an horror game, which is a fairly niche market. Also, DBD, is it fine if I say DBD? Okay. Also, DBD is an asymmetrical game, which was and is still very relatively unique. So it was very hard to predict how much it would resonate with our players. And last but not least, oh, what was the last one? Sorry. Oh yeah. Last but not least, since we are an indie studio, we didn't have a huge marketing budget to promote the game. So I wouldn't say that we were worried in the sense that we didn't need to sell a lot of copies to break even, but honestly, we didn't know how successful the game would be. And when we saw how many players were enjoying the game when we launched, it was like a dream comes true to us. So we are very happy about that.
And what's the difference between Dead by Daylight and the other projects you have been involved at other game studios? The difference between these two projects.
Behavior is an indie studio, and I used to work in video game companies with very large dev teams of 500 people and more. And while this is awesome in terms of production capability, it becomes hard to know everyone, and I think that decisions are slower as well. And I think that this is what makes DBD unique and great. It's the fact that the team is small enough so that we know everyone, and I'm going to do it again. It's okay. Ça va pas être long, c'est bientôt fini. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Behavior is an indie company. I used to work in companies with very large dev teams of 500 people and more. This is great in the sense, that in terms of production capability, it is just insane. However, I think that with such large dev teams, it becomes hard to know everyone, which is something that I value a lot, and decisions are slower. Also, you don't necessarily ship more content. So I think that the strength of Behavior, and especially the strength of the Dead by Daylight team, is that it is small enough so that everyone knows everyone, and we are very agile. However, the team is still big enough so that we are able to ship content very regularly and operate the game live. So I think it's a perfect mix.
Behavior interacted to change your operation strategy by the success of Dead by Daylight.
With the growth of our games, and with the fact that we recently bought back our publishing rights from Starbreeze for Dead by Daylight, we structured and grew our operations teams. So I'm the head of product strategy, so I'm in charge of product management, marketing, community management, PR, customer support, and business intelligence. And this is to ensure that we are able to provide a great experience for our players and make sure that we are building the right things for them.
And what's the operation strategy of Behavior Interactive? What's your opinion about it? About the strategy now?
I think the answer of my former question was exactly that. It's just the same.
And the last one is how do all the departments of Behavior Interactive work with each other? Think about it for a while, and
okay, sorry, it's a bit noisy.
It's okay. It's good actually for a game company, I think.
Oh yeah? Okay, all right.
Okay. How do all the departments work together?
So, in Behavior Digital, we have the Dead by Daylight dev team, the Death Garden dev team. We have the R&D dev teams, and we also have all of the services teams like marketing, community management, customer support, business intelligence, and DevOps. The QA teams are embedded in the dev teams, and as for the localization, we are working with external agencies, and we have awesome moderators helping us with that as well. We also have product managers working closely with dev teams and services teams.
Hi, I'm Ash Panel. I'm the creative director on Death Garden.
Okay, great. Let's begin with the idea. How did you come up with the core idea of Death Garden?
So Death Garden was created as part of our exploration on how to continue to look at what asymmetrical games would mean. So we have an internal prototyping department here called Hugo that continued to look at different ways we could explore asymmetry in games. Now, one of the questions we came up with during that was what would happen if one of the people had a gun? And what if the other people didn't? So that was the basic starting point to the game. And we started prototyping out different versions of that. It started out, interestingly, as the hunter was stationary, and we had runners run around, and then it was like a sniping alley, and we looked at that, and we saw what that did. And then we progressed from that into having a moving hunter and then the moving runners. And then we started combining these ideas to create a bigger prototype about how this would work in an arena-based setting. And that led inevitably to what we now know as Death Garden.
Great. And can you tell us the relationship between Dead by Daylight and Garden? Death Garden?
I mean, yes. So the relationship between Dead by Daylight and Death Garden is essentially me. That's the only similarity ultimately between the two. Obviously, both came from our prototyping department. Then I worked for 2 years on Dead by Daylight, doing that project as well. And then at the end of that development, I moved off to start a new team with a new mandate to try and push the asymmetry further. We were looking for a new audience, we were looking to create a different type of gameplay, and we were looking to see if we could make more interesting uses of the asymmetry that we'd already created in Dead by Daylight. So I mean, obviously we're two very separate teams. We talk individually, we share opinions and stories about how things are going, we talk about differences in the way we like to take our game. So we have a lot of communication between the two teams, but they are two completely separate teams. Oh, I can answer it again.
Is there anything else that Death Garden inherited from Dead by Daylight?
Absolutely. I mean, Death Garden and Dead by Daylight, obviously both starting from an asymmetrical background, inherited a lot of other core philosophical concepts. We changed too, like the pacing and the guns and things like that, but there were many other things that they shared, like the first and the third person is a core shared mechanic between the two. The idea that the killer in Dead by Daylight and the hunter in Death Garden is in first person, therefore has that constrained field of view, is a very important part of the mechanic. The hide and seek gameplay with the runners or the survivors having the ability of the awareness of the environment versus the individual killer and hunter having that first person, which gives to those wonderful moments where you always get those close calls and escapes. In Death Garden, you slide into a bush and the hunter walks right by, or the hunter, you can almost sometimes stand there completely unhidden and the hunter's field of view is so constrained they might miss you or is too focused on the middle distance. So these elements are shared in concept. They're not shared specifically, but they create a similar vibe of allowing the sort of weaker, faster group of players to compete against this vastly overpowered killing machine.
And what kind of learning you get from the development of Dead by Daylight?
Well, the most important learning we got was that you're making two separate games at the same time. So understanding how to start to balance this concept where you have so many different moving parts in an asymmetrical game, because you do have first-person gameplay, third-person gameplay. Normally you try and keep those in one game or two games, not put them together in one. So everything is interconnected. Every action one takes and the reaction to the other team is completely interconnected. So all these different elements combine to create a very complex set of systems. So we learned on Dead by Daylight quite a good method of being able to balance the two sides, what we called the arms race, where we empower one side and it's clearly overpowered, then we empower the others, and then we try and find a balance as we move forward. And all the way through the development of Death Garden, we were constantly pushing one side then the other to try and get to the balance along with the gameplay that we have. And obviously one of the big differences between the two is that Death Garden has a team-based slant, or more of a team-based slant than Dead by Daylight has. So that also has to play into account into how you're balancing the game. So yeah, these differences or the learnings that we got from Dead by Daylight was really understanding how very small changes to one side might not be visible or understandable to the other. And that's one of the things we tried to fix on Death Garden, was try and make things clearer for all the players all the time.
Okay. So how do you decide the art style, the sci-fi genre of whole game?
So we obviously went with a very strong horror fantasy on Dead by Daylight, and what we were looking for was to try and create a post-apocalyptic fantasy. So we wanted to move it into the future, and because we were setting it in this Colosseum-like blood sport arena, we wanted to set it in a place that made sense for us, which was the future. It had to be somewhere in the future. How had society devolved to the point where people would take part in this blood sport? So we wanted to always tell a story that was going to be about the fall of mankind, that no matter how much it tries to better itself, it keeps falling back on the brutality of the past. So we had this idea that in the future no longer were material possessions any important, that they'd moved beyond that, and now all they had was the idea that in order to progress yourself in society, you had to take part in this sport. You had to put your life and your body on the line to be able to show your worth to the society. And we've seen this in other sci-fi concepts as well, and we thought it would be a good way of being able to explain why this brutality is taking place over and over and over again in the game.
Is there any kind of, abandoned idea or design that can be shared?
Of course, there are that I can share. Well, there are many, many ideas. As I said, the first iteration of this game started with a stationary sniper who was just picking off players as they were running through a procedurally generated environment. So, for example, there was one major idea that got changed into the movement of the players. There were many others that have come along. We looked at all kinds of different fantasies at the beginning. We looked very much leaning towards a sort of Roman Colosseum gladiator style. At one point, we looked at, pushing the horror further, pushing the sport fantasy further. It was all what settled down to this idea of a future blood sport became the eventual aim, but many things came and went along the way for sure. Some were much more high-tech, some were much more sci-fi, and then we wanted to ground it. I mean, ultimately for me, I feel like a sci-fi has to be grounded in what I believe humans would do to each other in the future. So we always put it through that filter. Some things would edge too much towards the fantasy, some things would edge too much towards the sci-fi, and then we constantly are trying to bring it back to something that if I see this on the street, would it scare me? Would it fill me with fear? Do I want to be hunted? Do I want to hunt this thing? So those are always the questions we're asking.
Not the expansion, can we talk about the performance of Death Garden after the early access launch?
Sure.
The player said about it.
So we're in early access now, which comes at the end of a three-part process for us. We're in early access. The three-part process was the alpha, which we launched, and then the beta, which we launched, and then we went into early access. Now, all three of these phases are to help us really understand what people are getting out of our game. Because with so many moving parts, it's very important that we take on this feedback, we understand what people are saying, and we begin to react and change our game. The purpose of all these phases is so that we can change the game to be more what people want. So we're listening, we're hearing what people say, we're playing with them, we're watching them play as well, and we're beginning to understand and get a better idea of which parts of our asymmetry we want to tweak to create a game that's more appealing for everyone in the world. And we'll continue to do this up until the point where we launch, and then we hope we have a game that's more appealing to everyone. But as I said, it's early access, so until we're ready to launch, we will be listening, adjusting, and changing the game. I mean, if nothing else at the moment, we have too many ideas that we want to do to the game. The game was built from the ground up to be expandable, to be changeable from the procedural environment to the game modes. So we will adjust as we want to try and adapt to the needs of the players.
So what about the live stream? Is that something that inherited from the Dead by Daylight?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the live stream and the communication with our fans is really important to us. It's really important that we get to tell them what we're doing. It's really important that they get to see us, get a chance to ask questions that we can answer. And staying as transparent as we possibly can with our community is really important to us. So the live stream, certainly on Dead by Daylight, was a really important way that we could do that. It was a way to really communicate with the hardcore fans and with other people who are coming by as an interest. And that's something that we definitely decided to continue moving on to Death Garden, and it's something that's really good fun. And we do all kinds of different ones now. We do the commentary ones and the play with the devs ones, and then we do the bigger ones that have content updates. So we're trying to shake it up a bit and do different things and try and create more of an entertaining and relaxed way to talk to our fans.
And please share some stories about the game when you show it to at TBS or Gamescom.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had two major chances to show this to the public. And it's really interesting because you spend 2 years in a bubble where you're playing the game with the dev team, and you're playing every day and you're playing all the time, and you're getting a good idea of what the game might become. But it's not until you actually put it in the hands of completely new people that you really understand what the game is and what's going to happen with the game. And PAX East was our first opportunity to do that. We had a booth, we had queues around the block, we saw people come in, they really got into the vibe, and we really understood at that point that we maybe had something that was going to work. And then we also took it to Gamescom. And that was a much bigger exercise for us. It had even more people there. It was line up round the block all day, every day. The feedback was amazing. And we still really believe we have something completely compelling. When we see real players play it, when we play it with them, we can see how the mechanics interact. We know we're onto something really good, and we're going to continue to do that, to show, to talk, to get the feedback and build something special.
Is there some players that just surprise you by the way you play?
Absolutely. We knew at the moment that we'd launched that there would be players that surprise us, from being the most amazing, highly skilled FPS players. You never know what your skill ceiling is going to be. All you know is that it's definitely going to be higher than what you play either in the dev team or certainly when you go out. We do some user tests, but that is exactly the purpose of the alpha and the beta and the early access, is find out what motivates people, what drives them. When you've got, a skill dynamic that ranges from the best FPS players in the world to the worst FPS players in the world, you really have to start making decisions about how you want to bring those two together. What decision do you want to make about your game? Who do you want to appeal to? Who's going to come and play your game? So yeah, watching some of these people playing with some of these people, it's very eye-opening when you walk into a game. As I consider myself a marvelously good runner in our game, but then when you play some of these FPS players, it's insane how good they are. And it brings a whole new level to my gameplay too when I do it. So yeah, and it's the same with the runner gameplay too. Having the ability to work together as a team means ultimately 5 amazing players become more than the sum of their parts. And when we see these players play, when they start interacting with the mechanics, obviously we're going to be adjusting and balancing out the whole thing as we move forward.
Great. And almost every shooting game has its own problems about community, like they are too hard to learn.
Exactly.
They scare some people away. So what do you think of this when it comes to it?
Absolutely. Accessibility is one of the key areas we're looking at now and working on. We're obviously announced for console as well, which means it's going to be controller based as well. So we do need to keep working on ways to bring the low skill hunter, or the learning hunter, I would say, into a better sense of proportion against a crack team of 5 amazing runners using all the skills at their disposal. So this is what we're edging towards. This is what we're continually working towards. And these are going to be aspects that we continue to add features to keep massaging until we're ready to launch. And when we do our launch, as I said, it'll come not only on PC, but also on console as well. So at that point, the world needs to come together and have a better, balance is another thing we learn about. The balance means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So when I say balance, I mean a general sense of overall satisfaction from all skill levels.
Okay. Then what about how you guys finish the job of localization? At least it is almost, I believe it's 10 or 8 language edition.
Yes. So we have we obviously have, there's 2 major parts of the text in the game and audio as well. And we'd always planned to have a nice localization pipeline. We wanted to appeal to as many players in the world. One of the key learnings from Dead by Daylight was that this or that game appealed across a very wide set of borders. But Dead by Daylight didn't require a great amount of team play to be able to coordinate. So what we wanted to do was create a game that you did have to coordinate with, but we didn't want barrier to be a language as much as possible. So it was very important for us to make sure that we localized to as many languages as we could, to as many countries as we could. And even inside we have our Intellicom system, which is the system within the game, which is a contextual way of communicating. So if you're near the hunter, you can ping, it goes, I'm near the hunter. And we wanted to make sure that that alone could be communicated across as many languages. So if you're sitting in one language and you communicate, I'm near the hunter, then anyone else can know and find a way to work out the team play of the game without the need to having to use voice chat. So voice chat we always knew was something we wanted, but we wanted to make it an extra on top. We wanted people from around the world to be able to communicate without having to chat to each other.
Hold us 1 second, the guy.
Alexi.
We we're good to go for the last one. If you'd like to say something to the Chinese community players for that.
Sure, like everyone around the world, they've been amazing to us both through all three phases of this early access. We've learned a ton. Boy, have we seen how competitive you guys can be. It's super interesting, when I'm playing with it. I mean, you can see when you're playing, roughly where the people around the world are playing for just from their names and their tags. So I know when I'm playing with the Chinese audience, those runner teams are crack teams and they're amazing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to pan out in the future when we make a few changes to the game, but I think it's only going to be better.
I'm Mathieu Côté. I am the game director on Dead by Daylight.
Great. Then can you tell us something about your daily job? What do you exactly do every day?
I have a job that's very rarely regular. So what I do a lot is help keep the vision of the project, help keep everybody sort of focused on the same goals for the future. I work a lot with the community, making sure that we get our message across. I also work a lot with our outside partners, whether they're licensors or publishing partners or events organizer. So I manage a lot of that and help all the different parts sort of come together.
Let's talk about the mechanic design of Dead by Daylight. We have heard that at the beginning its prototype is designed as a kind of board game.
Well, there was a board game at some point, but yeah, whatever method we could use to test the mechanics of the game as quickly as possible. So the very first prototype we had was very, very rough. It was just cubes and just generic characters running around. We also had because it wasn't multiplayer, it wasn't on a network because we needed to keep it simple. So it was on a very big screen, and we had a cardboard that we put in between the screen to make it like a two-player game. Yeah, it was very rough, and it was a great way for us to be able to test the mechanics very, very fast.
What did it look like?
Can you move a little bit with your left? No turn, it's just move.
Oh, move. Yeah. There you go.
What did it look like when, at the beginning, the prototype was?
Well, we have some images. Maybe we can get you one, but it looked very, very gray because there was no texture and it was just cubes and it was just shapes that you were running through. Enough to see if we could cut line of sight, if you can hide between objects. It's not a forest, it's just like cylinders in the middle, and it was just enough for us to test the principle of hiding and hunting.
Oh, the way of playing, does it change a lot during the time?
The basic principles were there from the beginning. Things like the survivor could go a little faster and navigate through the environment, but by being fast, leave loud noise indicators and footsteps. All these things were already there at the very beginning. The mechanics of the one shot to down you, all these things were already recognizable. They were rough and they weren't exactly the way they are right now, but most of the stuff was already there.
So were there any design that was abandoned during this?
Yeah, well, one of the things we knew we wanted, already the first prototype had a randomly generated level, because we knew we needed to be constantly uncertain. We needed to have some mystery because that would help get the fear correctly, especially because we played that a lot. So if you learn the whole map, then it's not as scary. So we already had that, and we also needed to have different powers for the killer, so that the power could be a surprise also. So we made, I think, a dozen or 20 powers, and some of them we never recreated because we did stuff really fast, and we tried things like the flying killer, the invisible killer, the killer that just teleports to a random place around the map, things that some aspects maybe we kept and we saw later, but some things, they just made no sense. Like the completely invisible killer, we were never going to do that, but it was fun to at least test the principle. Same with the flying killer. the way we built the game right now. I mean, it's like a movie set. If you don't need to see the top of the world, then there is no top. It doesn't exist. It's just common practices in video games. But that means that we couldn't possibly have a flying killer right now. And anyway, it would be completely overpowered.
So next question is maybe, is there a time when you have an issue or some mistake, like there's an update that will be slid by players, and how do you handle such situations?
What do you mean specifically?
Like maybe there's a unbalance or bug, and when there's something bad happens, how do you react to it?
We constantly reevaluate and tweak our things and balance the game according to, according to a few things, according to what we feel is right, according to what the players want, and according to a lot of the stats that we collect. We used to react much faster and in a much stronger way, but we've changed that. When we release a new killer, we now are more confident that it's okay to give people a week or two to learn these new things and to take the time to learn how to play against and to play that killer before we react and change the killer completely. We've done that in the past, and that's a learning that we have. We don't react as fast or as strongly immediately that we do. We leave people the time to.
There is a strong will to communicate with community in Dead by Daylight.
Yep.
It's actually not that normal compared to the other games. Why?
Well, I think it started from the fact that we didn't have a marketing department, we didn't have a PR department. It was just us talking to the community, and we felt that it was really important to set the tone. It was the first time that Behavior as a company started a conversation with their players. Usually we were doing projects for other people, for licenses, for outsourcers. And so this was the first time that we were doing our own game and that we were presenting it to people. And it was important for us to get the feedback and to show people in the tone and in the way we communicated that we are also passionate gamers. We understand their concerns, we understand what they want. And as it progressed, it's true that things changed a little bit, but also we realized at some point that this game is not just ours anymore. At some point, there are over 5 million people who bought the game and played the game and go, oh my God, to some extent enjoy it. And it is a little bit theirs now. So we wanted that conversation to be as transparent and direct as possible for that.
We have talked to Murphy before, and I believe she told us that you recruit her by entering her last room. What's the story?
So and I say we, it was me and Steven and a few others on the team. We spent a lot of our time actually following YouTube people who made videos on YouTube or Twitch streamers, and literally going into their stream and interacting with them and talking directly one-to-one. And that's how most of our promotion was done, in the first year at least. And at some point we realized we need to have someone on the team that is dedicated to that job, every day. And we need a community manager. And for that we wanted someone who had an expertise in that, who would understand the worries and the concerns of the streamers and the broadcasters in a way that most of us don't. So we decided to go and find someone who had experience in that more than experience in game development. We were already looking at a lot of the streamers, and Gabrielle was streaming Dead by Daylight a lot, and we had visited her many times, and we knew that she was smart. We knew that she had strong opinions, and she was able to voice them in a constructive and positive way. She was also showing a lot of resolve and endurance, because it's really tough to be in front of a crowd day in and day out and to take whatever they give you and turn it into energy, into positive things. And she had shown that she could do that. And the great thing is we realized that she was local. She lived in Montreal here, so it was perfect. We contacted her, we asked her to come in for a chat, and she didn't know. She was just like a streamer that get invited by a developer, and she was very excited to come by. And when we said that we had intentions of bringing her in as part of the dev team, she was super excited. And it was a short conversation. On both sides, we were very happy with that. And it's been for both sides, it's been extremely educational. I think everybody learned a lot on how to do things and what it is, because she brought in a perception and a perspective of the game that was very, very different, and it was great for us. Yeah, she's doing a great job.
Okay, back to game design. There's one question, actually, how do you design this survivor character? Does it? When you will start a question about the survival design?
So when we design survivors, the idea is to create people who seem real and who people will be able to relate to. So we try to find compelling stories that are people that you could meet in school, people that you could meet at the coffee shop, your neighbors. It needs to feel like these are real people. It's also for us a good opportunity to show diversity, to show a bit of an inclusiveness, because the world is not, like often the stereotypes you see, especially in the horror movies in the 80s and 90s, there's a lot of stereotypes that we don't feel it's necessary to perpetuate. And we want to have our players. We know that our players are from all around the world. There's a lot of women playing the game. There's people from all the backgrounds possible, and we want them to like they are represented in the game in a certain way.
So you're not making one of yours in the game?
No. There was one at the very, very beginning, one of the 4 first, so Dwight. When we created that character, every year at the office we have an auction for charity. We collect money for charity and we sell whatever we have. It can be a t-shirt, it can be whatever, but we decided on the Dead by Daylight team to sell put your face in the game. And so people here could pay money to have their face in the game, and there was a programmer back then who paid, I don't know, some amount of money to have his face in Dead by Daylight, and he's the face of Dwight. He doesn't work here anymore, he's gone, but it's his face.
Okay, so let's begin with all these things.
Oh, this? Okay. So I can try to explain what we have here. Can I? Yeah? Okay. So we've been working on getting some merchandising done for the game for a while. It's a very slow process. It can be a little difficult, but we have some stores right now where we sell t-shirts and mugs and things like that, which is really fun. This mask was created also by them, so now this one is a prototype, so the one that you buy through the store is slightly better quality, but this is still really, really cool, and it's surprisingly comfortable. So now you can get your very own Trapper mask from our official website. These are a bit of a collector's item now, because it was a company called Fankicks who made specific shoes for video games. I'll show it to you like this. They're really, really cool, but the company closed down, so they were available for about a year, and now you are unable to get them from anywhere. I have a pair, but that's it. So we'll continue to do efforts to bring more merchandise to players. It's been asked many, many times. So already we have a few things that we add to the store once in a while, and we are in discussions with a few other partners right now to do some really cool stuff that people can get their hands on. We know it's requested.